You have the best time.
It still wasn't enough.
Relax.
Isabelle, you were physically and mentally challenged in your role as Alex. Where did the physical and mental coincide for you as you and Lauren were developing the character? And why was it important to communicate both those sides correctly?
I think the physical and mental really came together in the state of exhaustion. I mean, I no, but truly, I mean, I think as an actor, you constantly try and figure out like what your in is to a character. And luckily for me, like my in to this character was rowing. It was the training process of waking up at 4:30 in the morning and rowing for 6 hours every single day for 6 weeks leading up to the shoot. And our first week was our water week where we filmed all of our rowing sequences. And I remember waking up on the Sunday after that, like completely exhausted at like 4 in the afternoon, getting ready to go to the gym. And I knew that this kind of vulnerability and like open wound feeling that I was feeling on that Sunday, where like anything made me emotional. And like I was really kind of in this place where I was just constantly in my own head. And when people were talking to me, it was like I couldn't think about anything else other than like what words are they saying, because I wanted to be able to respond. I was like, oh, this is where Alex is the entire movie. Like, this was kind of like the missing ingredient that I remember being like, oh, you're just going to be really tired making this movie. And you know, luckily Lauren and I were on the same wavelength with that. I mean, the last week you couldn't even see the whites of our eyes when we were taking pictures. We were both like completely exhausted.
How did you think about your relationships with other women, either friend or romance, after experiencing the character of Alex?
What I love about the relationships between the women in this movie is that everyone's got their own kind of competition and battle that they're facing. Jamie, Amy Forsythe's character, you know, she's battling her own kind of competition of getting the scholarship because she needs it in order to not have to live with her dad. She has a really high set of stakes. You know, so does Charlotte Ubben's character, who wants to be, you know, in the number one boat, but she's not going to like really fight tooth and nail for it. She's kind of waiting for her time. And then you have, you know, the coach who's coaching the varsity team, like Lauren said, like, you know, go to a school where nobody even knows they have a rowing program, and she's like an ex-Olympian. You know, she has all these expectations of her athletes. You know, it really, the relationships between the women on the team, I thought was, you know, a really fascinating dynamic that Lauren, I think, more can speak to, because for me as Alex, I felt like Alex has, you know, removed herself completely from this whole team. Like she's on her own, sort of literally in her own boat, in her own journey. You know, in the relationship with Danny, that relationship to me was like the warmest part of our story. You know, and you know, obviously this is a movie about a young woman falling in love with this sport, falling in love with this boat. But you know, this romance that she has with Danny, it really kind of highlights these other aspects of her that you don't really get to see, and you start to see her kind of more vulnerable and warmer. And also at the same time, you know, being given really great advice from somebody in her life that she might actually listen to. The women were so well written, and that's because Lauren is an incredible writer, and she understands women, I think, on an incredibly deep level, because not only she is one, but I think Lauren deeply understands women.
There is a strange commercial on the air right now for a Peloton style crew workout that almost point for point recreates a particular scene in the movie and describes the athletic high from doing a crew workout. What is both positive and negative about this high?
Oh gosh. I mean, that's the thing about athletics that I think is so fascinating. And Lauren said this in a previous interview, it's true. Like there are times where you literally feel like you're having a like an orgasm at the same time as like dying, like absolutely dying. And that's like such a fine line. I mean, I run, and that's like always been kind of my athletic workout prior to doing this movie was running, and I had experienced runner's high many, many times. But rowing 2Ks like I did during this, you know, training process for this movie, I mean, you don't understand what that feels like until you try it. And not only until you try it, until you try it and you try and beat your time doing it. I mean, I remember doing my first, you know, 2K in my room on this erg that Lauren gave me, and I was like, oh wow, this is really difficult. You know, you mean you just can't even get up off the erg after you finish it, because your legs literally feel like bricks and your ass is just like so cramped up, and you feel exhausted, like completely exhausted and spent. But like at the same time, there's nothing better than this sort of like boost you get when you're like, oh, I did a little bit better than last time, you know? So there is this sort of masochism, I think, that all athletes have to have, where you're,
Right.
you know, you're pushing through a certain level of pain in order to achieve a better goal or a better time than what you had before. And I think that's theme of this movie too, is like this competition with oneself. And as an athlete, that's really what you're going for all the time, is to be better than who you were the day before.
It is said that each story you create and each role you perform changes your life incrementally. What would you both describe? How would you both describe the incremental change in your experience with The Novice?
I mean, I would say that this movie changed my perspective on, you know, being able to tell yourself when you've done a good job. I don't think that
Interesting.
I think that I've always been able to, you know, be my biggest, you know, critic and my best coach, and been able to support myself. But it's very rare in my life that I've been able to go like, you did a really good job. And, you know, it's funny, I remember before this movie came out, when we got accepted to Tribeca, and actually when I saw it on the screen, I remember being like, I can't even believe this. Like, I had the best time making this movie. I worked my ass off. I feel so proud of this. And like, this to me, I'm good. I did a good job. And then, you know, like you said at the beginning, like we found out that we won best narrative feature. Yeah, I won best actress and Todd won best cinematography. And I remember being like, oh wow, wait, what? So
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2021.